Well, good afternoon and welcome to a very busy Overdy West Nurseries. It's a beautiful day in early spring. It's a little blustery and that's okay, but it's a nice pleasant day to be outside and to get some projects done. Now here on the nursery, things are really humming. We're building new greenhouses, we're sending out lots of plants to our partnering garden centres, so I hope you'll excuse a lot of the noise and activity that's going on in the background. But I wanted to show you right here in this part of the trials area that we have 3 varieties that are hand-picked for you selections. Very good, approved for this region and superb performers. Hardy, adaptable, puts up with a wide variety of soil types, including clay soils, grows over a very wide area of our region. They provide a long season of interest from early spring through the summer and into the fall. And they can be grown, as you see, in full sun or in shadier locations too. And what a lot of people like about them in this region is that generally deer don't normally bother with them. So there's really a lot going for these fantastic plants. But here's a couple of things I wanted to show you so that you can get the best performance from all of these and the other varieties too. Now before I get started, let me just mention that not all spireas are created equally. There are in fact different types. Principally, there are the spring flowering ones. Typically, they'll have lots of little white flowers that are produced during the springtime. With those, you allow them to grow out and flower, and then you prune them after they finish flowering. Whereas these, the japonica types, tend to flower later on during the summertime, and as you see, also quite a few will have really beautiful colored foliage too. This is what you do to them. Now, if you look closely at the plants, you'll see that they have this general kind of rounded, shapely habit. But also, if you look here on the tops of the plants, you'll see there's lots of little twiggy growth with the remains of the flowers from last year. So what we need to do is to go in now and to trim these back so that they still keep that shapely habit, but we remove all of this old twiggy growth so that we stimulate plenty of young fresh growth from the bottom, and those are the shoots that are going to grow out and produce the flowers. Now typically you would do this in the early part of the season before a lot of growth starts. That way you'll be able to really stimulate lots of growth. You can do it with a pair of pruners, and that's just a matter really of going in with the clippers and just trimming back all of these old flower heads so that you get a nice shapely habit. You can also do it with a pair of hedging clippers, and I have to say this is probably my favorite way of doing it because, of course, as you see, it's much quicker and also, I would say, quite a lot easier too. Now, as you see, it really doesn't take too long, and principally what you're doing is removing the old flower heads from last summer, starting off with a nice bushy compact plant that's now going to produce lots of new fresh growth. Also, you'll see that I'm not really been particular as to where you actually prune it, because you don't have to worry about going in and trimming it back to specific buds or whatever. You're really just shaping up the plant and getting it ready for a whole new growing season. Now this is a variety called Neon Flash, and it's really grown for its flowers. It's one that was introduced by Barry Yinger when he was at Brookside Gardens some years ago, and it's probably now one of the most popular varieties that we can grow here in this region. If you'd like to find out more about it, check it out, there is a video about it showing all the various features here on this channel. I'm chopping off, as you see here, the old flower heads, getting it back to a nice shapely mound. If you had an older plant that was perhaps outgrowing its position, then there's no reason at all why you can't take this back even harder than what I'm doing here. They respond so well to pruning that you really can be quite ruthless with them. Now, these are young, healthy, vigorous plants here. If, say, you had an older plant that was perhaps woodier and had a lot of old woody shoots inside, then that's when you would go in with a pair of pruners and do what we call renewal pruning. You would go in and cut out some of the old shoots to thin it out by about a third or so. You would take out these older shoots here, and that would stimulate young, fresh growth from inside the clump that's going to then keep the renewal. And if you take out about a third, then next year take out a third, and then the following year take out a third, as you can guess, you're getting plenty of renewal growth. But as I said, if you're like me and you tend to be a little bit more vigorous with your pruning, then this is definitely a plant that you can do that with too, because they really do respond very well to all sorts of pruning, even harder, more vigorous pruning. And in fact, if you have some old, rather woody, overgrown plants that you're getting tired looking at, while I don't necessarily advocate it every time, you can literally go in and you can cut them back quite severely, and they'll recover and grow away very nicely, putting on lots of fresh growth. That's how well they respond to pruning. And the treatment for the ones with coloured foliage is pretty much the same. With these, you're definitely looking to get some really bright, colourful foliage. So you can do as I'm doing now and just take them back a little bit, because when you trim off the old flower heads, you're going to stimulate lots of young, fresh growth that's going to come out of the shapely mounds. Or, if you want, because you're really growing these for the coloured foliage, they will flower. They produce attractive little pink flowers. But for me, the most attractive part of these plants is the foliage. You can take them back a little harder, because of course, the more you prune something, the stronger it's going to grow. And because you're looking for coloured foliage on these plants, the harder you take it back, the more you're going to stimulate growth, and the more colourful the plant is going to be. Now, they're still going to flower, but first what they have to do is to make the growth that's going to come out that then will carry the flowers a little later during the summertime. But because this variety, which incidentally is called Magic Carpet, this is a beautiful variety that was raised in southern England. Again, a really dependable, great variety if you're looking for one with attractive foliage and pretty flowers too. This one is going to give you a very long season of interest. So, therefore, what I suggest is that if you have this one, or ones like it at home, just go in and trim it back a little harder, because that will really produce lots of gorgeous, attractive foliage. Now, the final variety that I'm going to prune is this one called Gold Mound, a really good Canadian selection that was developed, I think, way back in 1987. Tight, compact grower, produces beautiful, gorgeous foliage, and again, tough and hardy, adaptable and very resilient, with dainty little pink flowers. And as you see, when you go through and give it a haircut at this time of year, you'll really stimulate lots of very attractive foliage and a long-lasting plant that's going to give you lots of glorious colour and contrasts nicely with all of the other varieties that you should be able to grow in your garden too. Now, the last thing to do after you've gathered up the trimmings is to put down a well-balanced fertilizer. This is a slow release fertilizer that I like using because when you put it on, you only need to put it on once and it works over a long period. The instructions on the bottle tells me to put down about 2 or 3 spoonfuls per plant, and so as you see, I'm just sprinkling this around the perimeter of the plant, and I'll probably just give it a little light rake in, as you see, just to key it in a little bit. And now all we have to do is to wait for Mother Nature to take over and produce lots of gorgeous, shapely plants with beautiful foliage. And that's how you can look after your Japanese Spireas. This is David Wilson. Enjoy your gardening. It's good for us, and it's very good for our environment too.